this is Thomas with another exclusive episode, and today's episode is about the famous Nürburgring Nordschleife. You can see it here in the background, a famous racetrack in the western part of Germany with a lot of legends and of course a lot of very interesting and also deadly races, and also the Xiaomi SU7 Ultra. There is the Xiaomi SU7 Chinese EV, and recently they revealed the Ultra version, and everyone is talking about that because they scored a record lap on the Nürburgring Nordschleife, 6 minutes 46. So this vehicle there has very extreme figures and numbers, under 2 seconds in the acceleration figure, over 1,500 horsepower, one electric motor in the front, 2 electric motors at the rear, 93 kilowatt hour battery, and 10 to 80% state of charging in 11 minutes. So yeah, they're ticking all the boxes and exceeding that, and everything of that at an approximate price of around 100,000 euros. So first of all, which competitors are there actually? There's the Tesla Model S Plaid, which is more expensive, also really quick. Then there's the Tesla Model 3 Performance, which is, let's say, about a second slower, but it has actually at approximately half the price. So that is like in the price performance ratio, extremely interesting. And the Porsche Taycan Turbo GT, which is more than double the price than the Xiaomi SU7 Ultra. It's also in like this 2 seconds region, a little bit slower than in the acceleration, but definitely way more expensive. And they are also going to talk about in general about racing these vehicles. So the record lap here, 6 minutes and 46 seconds approximately. Very impressive. New record also for four-door sedan. And even more interesting is that about 12 seconds in this lap, the car didn't even have the full power. So if they fine-tune it a little bit more, plus have better weather, so at this moment the weather isn't that good, and it's often very rainy at the Nürburgring Nordschleife. This is in the so-called Eifel region, like a mountainous region in Germany. Not too high mountains though, but it has a volcanic origin, and often the rain clouds are still stuck there basically. It's really moist. So it's also very critical conditions very often at the road. And if they would have very dry, perfect conditions, plus maybe another round without any power loss, they could easily score a better lap figure there. That is the impressive thing. And we have to think about that Xiaomi, originally a smartphone manufacturer, in just a couple of years put that on the road. That is really impressive. I also talked to some people in the automotive industry and what they think also, like from the manufacturer side, which of the Chinese manufacturers have the most promising approach or the best quality in driving dynamics and so on. And they say indeed that the Xiaomi SU7 is the one that seems to me like, you know, really, really high in the game there. So everyone is looking at Xiaomi, what they are doing, especially with that vehicle. This Ultra version, of course, we have to say it's very impressive in the numbers and figures, but it's not that important for customers. You know, most customers, of course, will buy the normal version. And this is, of course, I honestly have to say, always a little bit of, you know, some men try to do some, you know, plays, games, and yeah, who is faster and better, and you know what I mean. And yeah, if that's really so useful for the customer is, let's say, on another note. So I don't support these record things, because what is it for? Who needs a car with like an acceleration of 2 seconds? But for Xiaomi, it was definitely like screaming out like, here we are and this is what we can do. And definitely they got a lot of attention by that. So this is like, in this case, they fulfilled also the goal with that. With the Nürburgring Nordschleife, it's one of the most dangerous racetracks in the world, and it was opened in 1927, and up till this day, over 200 people have died on this racetrack. Racers, but also spectators who got hit by flying parts from accidents or whatever, so different causes for that, definitely. And professional racers, but also hobby racers or people who were just visiting, actually. So you always need to watch out for that for sure. As I said, opening in 1927. At that time as a test track, but not with like a lot of business around it or something like that. But more and more it got more famous, and it's extremely long for a racetrack and also extremely treacherous because there are so many topography changes, there are so many different corners with topography changes in itself. Also the surface of the road changes quite often, and it's often, you know, really not like well thought out. When you see like a Formula One track, a modern one on the TV, that's totally not like it. There's, for example, the so-called carousel, which is made basically of several plates of concrete, you know, where they're bam, 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 you go over them. Very spectacular indeed. And I've been driving on this racetrack myself. And yeah, there's a reason why it's called the Green Hell, because there's so many trees surrounding it, which also makes it dangerous. I've heard some very scary stories about that as well. And yeah, there's always the rain, and there have been so many very big international races where they had so much rain they had even to cancel the race. And they drove Formula One Grand Prix from 1951 on this very racetrack, by the way. And in 1976, there was the most famous accident on this racetrack with Niki Lauda, Formula One driver, and he almost burned completely in this accident. The racetrack was too wet, there was just too much rain. He was actually calling to abort the race, they didn't do that. Then the accident happened, he almost died in that crash. He even tried to come back the very same year, but couldn't get the title. But then he returned later and got the title once again. So very famous story of Niki Lauda there, of course. But after this accident, they actually decided that the racetrack itself was too dangerous and it was skipped from the Formula One calendar. Then they wanted to do a new GP-ready racetrack there at the Nürburgring. And the Nürburgring Grand Prix track was born. It's basically directly side to side to the Nordschleife. The Nordschleife, which is like the direct translation is North Loop. It's really like a very long loop around. And then there's like, in comparison, the really small modern GP track. That one is what was opened in 1984. And there have been numerous of Formula One Grand Prix there. Lately, of course, as happened to many other European tracks, it was more about who gives the most money to the Formula One circus, and so some of the traditional tracks have been cancelled and new races have emerged in countries where the government pays a lot of money that the races are taking place. And so there haven't been lately a Nürburgring GP in Formula One now for many years actually. And sometimes it depends on the race. They sometimes also combine both racetracks, like the GP track and the Nordschleife. So Formula One was then, you know, declining from the significance bit by bit. And in the 1990s, the so-called tourist drives were emerging, that you as a normal car driver could visit the track and drive on the track actually, you know. And this has also led to like more legendary stories, but also to, maybe you've seen it, to accident compilation videos on YouTube, for example, where you just need to stand at the side of the track somehow. Of course, meanwhile, everything is well guarded, and also metal fences and so on, that spectators not get hit, you know, by flying tire debris or something like that. And people just let the cameras record, and then you get accident after accident after accident. And the reason for that is that you often also mix professional drivers and hobby drivers, or maybe hobby drivers who are really experienced, can go really fast. And there are sometimes people going with absolute trash cars just for fun on the racetrack. But that's of course very dangerous, because you're mixing different speeds on this racetrack, and often people also try to prove themselves to their friends and so on. Yeah, and then they're exaggerating it and actually underestimating the dangerous factor of this track, because it's so extremely challenging. And then like the next chapter was like the 2000s, where the manufacturers got more and more involved. It has been used for testing before, but especially in the 2000s, more and more manufacturers, not only the Germans, even for example, the Hyundai Corporation, they also, you know, more intensifies the development for the N line, for example, for the whole of all their N vehicles that they develop it also there. And always when a car, the sports car especially, gets tested on the Nürburgring Nordschleife, it always gets like the Nordschleife development stamp. And so just next to it, there's like a road where a couple of manufacturers, Jaguar Land Rover as well, for example, they have their testing facilities there and use the track basically all year round. And it's not only for racing vehicles, it's also for durability tests, because you can roughly say that 1 kilometer driven on the Nürburgring Nordschleife is about 10 to 20 kilometers of what you put on the vehicle in normal road driving. So like all the bumps and changing of topography, acceleration, braking and so on. So by that you can, without just using simulations, do real world simulations, so to speak, like real testing, but in a relatively short period of time you can simulate a lot of kilometers and a lot of wear and tear on the vehicle. And that has also made the Nordschleife so important for the manufacturing. And then of course it was always used for record lap times, and there are different record lap times for different categories of vehicles, like 2-door, 4-door, sports car, this and that, SUV, and then electric vehicle, and so on. So many different record laps, and then it's always a question like where exactly do you measure, from where to where, and so on. Also always a lot of discussions about that. And then in the most recent years, this has been used for electric vehicles, that they can also show, hey, we can also score lap times, sometimes maybe even better, but there's always, of course, the weight. And I don't want to forget about that. This also leads me back to the SU7 Ultra. The facts and figures are all very impressive. And me, myself, I have been also driving these electric performance vehicles on racetracks like Tesla Model 3 Performance, also Tesla Model S Plaid and the Porsche Taycan Turbo GT. And it is extremely impressive what acceleration you can score out of them, and also the general performance. But then again, racing is always about lightweight, especially when you go left and right, and about the G-forces and how can you sustain it as a driver. And I have to say, as impressive as these electric vehicles may sound in their record laps and so on, and their acceleration figures, if you drive it yourself for fun, a race driver and also yourself as a hobby driver, you would always prefer a lightweight sports car, like here, or this was our footage here on the Nürburgring Nordschleife, the 718 Boxster there in the background. It's so much more fun to drive a lightweight sports car on the racetrack. It's so much easier to handle, and for example, like the heavy electric vehicles and the battery pack always make them heavy. It's just stressing your body too much that after a couple of rounds, or you might say, hey, you can score a great hot lap, but your body tells you, this is not fun, I want to end this. Whereas with a lightweight sports car, you say, this could be my hobby, I really enjoy driving a racetrack. Therefore, I always tend to say, yeah, we can go one more record lap after record lap, and it shows a potential of the vehicle. But when it's about fun and driving, then nothing still beats lightweight.